Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, Flower Alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Welcome to this month's episode of Moonshine. I'm with Kristina Wingeier, and we're recording November 2020. We'll have 2 more recordings for the rest of 2020. And then we're going to wrap up Moonshine after 3 years of astrology sessions together. We're going to come bring that to a close. So enjoy this last November and December of 2020. Thank you so much for being with us, Kristina.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been such an amazing opportunity and experience. I can't believe it's been 3 years, but I guess it has. So it's a good time to wrap something up, right?
It is a good time. 2021, that'll be a whole other new adventure.
It's a whole new adventure, and that is for sure. And November has us really kind of beginning to kind of close out the year. Obviously, it's November, but there are some, we've been struggling a lot this year with a lot of challenges with cardinal signs like Capricorn and Cancer and Libra. And so this month we're starting to really close that piece down. Like there really is something that is ending. And then we're in 2021, really headed into some long-term structural changes with Uranus and Saturn squaring each other. So we're starting to complete something. We're also entering an eclipse season this month. And we begin the month, let's see, on a Sunday. And, we had just had that full moon in Taurus on Halloween, like the night before. So we're still really under the influence of a very full Taurus moon. And with the ruler of the moon, Venus, having recently moved into Libra, there's a lot of focus this week on like social justice issues and fairness for all involved. How do we get along during times of conflict? I mean, it is an election week this week for the United States, pretty big deal. And the astrology is definitely playing into it. So we begin with November on Sunday. And listen, it may be some heavy energy today because we start out with this Mercury in Libra retrograde, right? Mercury is still retrograde at this point, making a square to Saturn in Capricorn. So this is the second of 3 squares that these 2 planets have made. The first square was on the 23rd of November. And so this is like kind of the midpoint, and this aspect between Saturn and Mercury really kind of lasts all week long, okay? So there can be some mental fatigue, right? There's a lot of needing to talk and communicate around practical matters with Saturn, right? Again, Mercury in Libra is looking to create some kind of new balance, some kind of justice, fairness, things like that. But there may be a lot of fear and anxiety around the future because Saturn has a little heavy, melancholy vibe oftentimes, and we have to really make responsible decisions, right? And then things are moving kind of slowly with Mercury. Mercury is getting ready to station direct, and I would just really invite us all to notice like fear-based, restrictive reactivity that we might be coming up against this week, because everybody already knows that we're like not going to know the election results right away. Like we've heard about that a million times. But Mercury is stationing direct on election day, and that's definitely snafu-y, So blocks and delays this week and wishing things were different or wanting things to go quicker or wanting information to be clearer. It may not be what we're receiving in the very beginning of the week. There's also an opposition between Venus and Chiron on this same day, which, oppositions can bring tension, a kind of push-pull kind of energy, but I do think that it can offer a new perspective on an old problem or pain points, and there's an opportunity for growth and healing, I think, from this aspect between Venus in Libra and Chiron in Aries. And so on Tuesday the 3rd, that is the day that Mercury stations direct. Mercury is stationing direct at 25 degrees Libra, and now Mercury stations are like really notorious for kind of like jamming up the airwaves, right? Things just don't move really quickly. Things aren't, there's just, a lot of like funny electronic things or traffic things, or just like you're trying to have a conversation and it's just kind of going sideways and you don't know what to do because, it's just going sideways. And so again, the winged messenger, Mercury, is still involved in this very tense aspect with Saturn. This is not complete yet, right? And so this is going to show up definitely in the news cycle. Lots of questions and confusions around like voting totals and tallies and things like that, and potential like technical snafus. And there'll be a lot of news, right? Obviously, because it's an election day. Mercury is about the news. But the moon is also in Gemini, making a square to Neptune. So that's another layer of like, what's happening kind of thing going on. I will say that the most beautiful opportunity with this Mercury stationing direct is that it's sitting conjunct a fixed star called Spica or Spica, depending on how you pronounce things. And this is one of the brightest stars in the sky. And it really has correlations to like good fortune and gifts from the goddess and nourishment, because in the constellation that it is found, it's this goddess holding a sheaf of wheat, and this star is in that wheat. And success, like things like of that nature. So that is a beautiful, subtle, but powerful, right? It's a star, so it has a lot of energy that Mercury is getting the beam of light from. And so even if we don't know the answers, even if things are confusing or aren't clear, that's a nice thing to lean into in your personal life for sure. And even if you want to try to hold that vision for, bigger outcomes, then you can do that. And then on Friday, that's when the 6th, that is when Mercury and Saturn make their third and final exact square. And so this says to me that resolutions are possible, right? Especially when we have a more kind of mature adult kind of conversations and coming from a place of thinking more like grown-ups than angry children. So, really suggesting that we do our best to speak and make decisions from emotional maturity. Like that could be the best possible outcome, I think. But there's also a lot of tension because the moon is in Cancer and it's making these oppositions to planets in Capricorn and squaring Mercury. And so it may just feel frustrating, but there is really this like energy of like, okay, what do you need to double check? Right? What do you need to review? Reviewing a contract or decisions or, things like that. And like diligence with Saturn, like doing your due diligence will always pay off, right? And Saturn is really strong in the astrology. It's in a very strong position. So kind of want to think about how to have Saturn as an ally here rather than the impatience that Mercury might be feeling, the impatience that Mars is feeling, things like that. And then Sunday, there's a last quarter moon in Leo. And so this is just a really great time to do a heart-centered review of kind of what's emerged in this lunar cycle. That lunar cycle would have begun with the new moon in Libra on October 16th. And the last quarter moon is always a great check-in point to help you kind of close out the lunar cycle with intention and to make space for the upcoming new moon. Squares are always inviting in a course correction, and a waning square is like releasing and letting go and clearing things out. That's how the lunar cycle offers us this rhythm to work with every lunar cycle. So that's the first week, Katie. What do you think?
I think it sounds like not bad. Just a little clunky, but hey, that's life, right?
Yeah, life is clunky wonky. Life is clunky wonky for sure. Any thoughts on any flower elixirs or anything that you want to share about, products that could help people, things like that? I know people want to love about that as well.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about the Flower Evolution Elixir a little bit later and just kind of see what emerges from your dialogue, because I don't see any like really clear correlation right now. Okay. But I will say that if you're not in the Flower Evolution, the blend that I recommend is called Boundless Wisdom. And that is for not only slowing down, but experiencing the spaciousness of the present moment, which is so helpful, right? When we're, things are clunky and we're impatient and things just aren't going as smoothly as we want them to. Boundless wisdom can, give us that spaciousness of just what's in front of us. So we're not rushing. And it also helps us be really flexible. So if things come up, if things are confusing, it just helps us stay really fluid and really in the moment.
That's beautiful. That's really good. That's a good blend for the month right there. Everybody, yeah, we need boundless wisdom. What did you say? Did you say spaciousness of the present moment? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I'm like in love with that phrase, the spaciousness of the present moment, because so often the present moment feels anything but spacious, right? So that's pretty cool. All right. Boundless wisdom. Do I have the spray right here? I do. I'm just going to do it. I can't help it, you guys. Or gals, or whatever.
Yeah, I've been so drawn to this one in the last week. Yummy.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice. Sacred perspective. All right, that's nice. That's a nice way to enter the first week or the second week of November. On Monday the 9th, we have a Venus-Mars opposition. Okay, so Venus is in Libra, and this is a sign that she rules, right? She's got a lot of strength and dignity and power in Libra. Now, granted, she's up against some strong odds of like things she has to navigate while in a cardinal sign, but she's very strong. She has all her resources, okay? And Mars is in Aries, retrograde, barely moving because Mars is getting ready to station direct pretty soon. So Mars is fairly cranky and impatient. However, I'm always going to offer that we can think about how we can use this energy in a way to uplift, right? And I think there's an opportunity to find new balance in relationships and in relational dynamics because Venus in Libra is really gracious and diplomatic. And since Mars is going slow, like maybe Mars will listen. It's like there's a lot of impatience, but sometimes like, it's almost like if you're sitting maybe in a plane. I don't know why I'm always doing plane metaphors with these aspects, but like you're in a plane and you're ready to take off and you're not quite, I don't know, you're just on the tarmac or whatever. It's like, how are you going to use your time? You're going to like be really cranky and just irritable and like frustrated, or maybe this like, maybe I'll just sit here and like count my breaths and breathe. And what can I look at that's going to help me shift my mood, because this is where I am. This is the situation as it is, So I think that's kind of like that. Like there's a stall with Mars, but maybe Mars will listen. So it's just really depends on your attitude and situation, but it definitely can be some struggles and conflict. And we would definitely be wise to maybe listen to Venus's guidance as she has the upper hand in strength and wisdom in this moment. There's also a Sun-Neptune trine on this day, which can really break down barriers and soften things. There can be a lot of creative and intuitive insights, right? However, as with any Neptune aspect, it can also be really easy to kind of want to check out and not really look at what you might be seeing, what kind of conflict or struggle or frustration might be very obvious because of the opposition. You may just really not want to deal with that. So let's see how you feel. And then on Tuesday, the 10th, Mercury goes back into Scorpio. Now we know Mercury is direct now, but Mercury has to go back through all of those degrees in Scorpio where Mercury was retrograde. So it's kind of like a cleanup mission. I think it's like cleaning up some toxic sludge that might be left over. And there's a very deeply probing mental energy with Mercury and Scorpio, and now moving direct, there's more clarity, right, about what you're moving through or what you're, or like maybe you can kind of see to the bottom of the well, like, because it's, you see what's down there finally, or see what's in the dark. It's clear, and you're kind of getting to the bottom of an issue. And I really think that it's a fixed mindset with Mercury and Scorpio because it's fixed water. So is this fixed mindset stabilizing or paralyzing, right? Because it could go either way. Scorpio can get a little enamored or enchanted by the shadow, right? And by the toxins themselves. So really noticing how your mind is. And again, this idea of retrieving or cleaning up or just like finishing something rather than getting stuck and really angry and, I don't know, really dark and brooding and heavy is where I might try to redirect my mind. Because, it's hard. And then on Thursday of this week, which is the 12th, this is a very important tete-a-tete between Jupiter and Pluto and Pallas Athena, which is an asteroid. And these three have been in this situation all year long. It's very fascinating. This is the third time that they're all coming together. The first time was in April, and they were all direct, okay? The second time was at the end of June, and they were all retrograde. And now we're here in November, and everybody is direct again. So there is some kind of resolution and moving forward, right, in this Capricorn area, which is also, there's a lot of energy that's been playing out there, and it's waning, it's closing down, it's almost over in a very big way as Saturn and Jupiter move into Aquarius at the end of the year. So there's really something, I feel like with the Pallas Athena piece that not everybody talks about. It's really these new strategies, right? She's a wisdom strategic she's on the war council of her father. Like, she's very insightful and she really wants to make things better. Okay. So there's a lot of new ideas about how to move forward in the next weeks, months, and years, but it's a little sobering because it is Capricorn. It's not super like, hurrah, it's kind of heavy. And this conjunction is actually happening at the very same degree that the Saturn-Pluto conjunction happened in January. That was like the beginning of this huge cycle that we were speaking about earlier this year. So it's kind of activating that intensity and the importance, right? It's an important connection between these three. So as far as the world goes, or mundane things, I think from what I understand and what I've learned about Jupiter and Pluto conjunctions and aspects is there is a strong correlation to finances and the stock market. And so I've heard it suggested that there may be some shifts and changes around things like that. And I think that would be something to pay attention to over the next couple of weeks. I don't think it would happen all at once necessarily, but Jupiter and Pluto definitely in Capricorn have to do with resources and money. And then on Friday the 13th, Mars stations direct. So all this while, Mars has just been kind of sitting at 15 degrees Aries, just impatient, right, to get moving in a new direction, to move forward. So there is a change of direction, although, of course, the planet is still quite still. So it's not necessarily like they're off out the gates. It's like, okay, the gates are open now, or you can turn and look at the gate and you're going to go through it or whatever. So there is this like beginning to move forward, or the potential for moving something forward. And for the individual, I think what it will bring is a sense of kind of freedom and movement to whatever topics you've been reviewing in your Aries house, because that's going to be very specific to 12 different life areas. So like momentum, motivation, and mojo are going to be kind of building over the coming weeks, because Mars will be in Aries through the end of the year and into like the first week of January. So it's a lot of Mars and Aries time. In the news and things like that, there might be some more conflicts, because Mars moving forward is like, if there's been any pausing or kind of hesitation, when Mars moves forward, Mars is connected to aggression, so it may not be looking so friendly. And it's Friday the 13th, so I don't know what's gonna pop up that day, but at least Mars is turning direct. It's been pretty brutal. How have you been with the Mars retrograde?
I mean, I think I'd have to look in my chart to see where it's hitting, but I've been spending a lot of time with a very boisterous Aries 8-year-old. And that's been really fun. And what else? It's funny. I haven't felt the sort of like sludge down that I have in past years, but it definitely has felt like a huge review.
Like what motivates you, right? Like around what lights you up and what you want to do, what you want to take action about. Yeah, things like that.
Yes. Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. So that's a big deal. We've been waiting for it. And on that same day, Venus makes a nice trine to the North Node in Gemini. So again, there's some new perspectives possible, I think, on a new mindset or conflict resolution from Venus. So that's a nice thing to feel into. On Saturday the 14th, we have a couple of minor aspects between the Sun and Pluto and Jupiter, these sextiles. Okay, they're very subtle. But I think with Pluto, we're going to get some insights from beneath the surface. And with Jupiter, there's potential optimism around growth from maybe an updated value system, right? And there's also a new moon in Scorpio on that day. It is on the 15th for the East Coast in Europe and other parts of the world. But where I live on the West Coast, it is on Saturday the 14th. It's a new moon in Scorpio. It's technically a supermoon. That means that the moon is very close to Earth in her orbit around Earth. And when the moon is close to Earth, if it's a new or full moon, and the moon is in that place in her own cycle, it's called a supermoon. So we have a super new moon in Scorpio. And the ruler of this moon would be Mars, who's very slow and kind of cranky and itching to get moving, making some squares to all those Capricorn planets that gotta navigate those in the coming weeks. But like, it's a pretty simple new moon, honestly. There's not a lot going on in it. There's a nice little sextile to Jupiter and Pluto and Pallas Athena, which is like, again, showing us some opportunities for growth and maybe new tactics. But with the moon in Scorpio, the new moon in Scorpio, it's kind of like what wants to be transformed, right? Because Scorpio is so much about transformation. And so really looking to your Scorpio house to understand the topics of that house and what kind of renewal you might be wanting or intending for that part of your life would be the best way to work with this lunation directly. There's a lot of issues around control and vulnerability and maybe even forgiveness as we try to move forward from a place of healing rather than a place of like retribution. And of course, if you want more information on that, I have an Astro membership called By the Light of the Moon, and we have a new moon call every month, and we get into this pretty deeply, which is also a nice way to work with this moon energy a little more intentionally, I guess. And then the 15th, mid-month on a Sunday, we've got it's kind of a little bit of it's a little bit jammed up. Venus is squaring Pluto and Jupiter, so there's like potential power plays and kind of tests of faith. And then Venus is opposite this dwarf planet called Eris, who's a war goddess. So it's kind of like, who's playing dirty? I don't know. It just feels like, especially with the Scorpio new moon and just the intensity that Scorpio can have, it just feels a little charged that day. So maybe some tense exchanges or, just some really deep feelings. And I doubt that it's going to be like people are feeling super casual. You know what I mean? It's just like kind of like intense, aspects there to navigate. And that's the end of week 2. Anything coming up for any themes yet for you?
Well, let me tell you what Radiance Orchid is, and maybe you'll be able to tie in why we're working with it. It's this incredibly fragrant orchid it grows anywhere in the tropics, and it grows on trees. And it's really around, perhaps it's around your highest vision. But in order to get to your highest vision, we often have to look at like perceived separation or loss. So some of the questions around it might be like, have you experienced loss? Do you find yourself reminiscing? It's kind of like Scorpio vibe, right? Have any of your relationships suffered because of polarizing views? Do you feel out of shape? Do you have money worries or fear about the future? And what it really enhances is this ability to release attachments. So oftentimes when we lose someone, we kind of cling to the idea of them because we don't want to lose them. But when we actually can look at the fear of loss, we can release all the tension around the attachment so that we're not actually letting go of that thing. We're just letting go of the tension around it. And it greatly amplifies self-acceptance. So we feel at home in our bodies. We feel at home in our lives. Whatever the situations are that are arising, we can embrace them fully without feeling like we need to chase things or that we missed the boat, FOMO, fears about missing something. Instead, we just feel like, okay, I'm in the right place at the right time with right timing. So I don't know how that plays in, but maybe you'll be able to see with the aspects.
There's something you said about like the letting go of the clinging that feels, again, if we're going to close out and let there be some kind of resolution around all of the tension that has been happening with the cardinal signs this year, then we probably have to not be attached to how things were. And that's kind of like the big lesson of 2020, because we're all adapting to the way things are and we don't know how they're going to be. So just being very present. And also when you said that the orchid, first of all, it's fragrant. I love that, because that there's, especially with an orchid, when you walk by, you're like, what's that smell? It's just, it can transport you into another realm. And it's just like such a surprise with an orchid to me when there's a beautiful fragrance. It's very exotic and delicious. But when you said that it grew on trees, to me, I was just thinking, I don't know what kind of trees, but I was thinking about the longevity of trees and the rootedness, the way that trees are so rooted and grounded. And there's like a healthy, under the soil, like all the mycelium that might be around each particular, types of trees. And then that strength of moving upward and holding earth and sky, and the beauty, the dancing orchid, radiant deliciousness, moving up that. that feels like a nice idea and image and energy to anchor into when things are so uncertain. And it's really just speaking to me a lot about, as we always do, just anchoring into the earth and to Gaia and to nature and to all the lessons and teachings there. So that's kind of what's coming up. All right, let's move on to week 3. On Tuesday, there is a Mercury and Scorpio opposition to Uranus and Taurus. This is the third one. We've been working with this energy on and off in October, which is a lot about, new ideas or out-of-the-box thinking or the arrival of shocking and outrageous information or news. And so maybe there's some kind of resolution to something that has been in the works for a while in your own life that maybe was initiated around the 7th of October when these two first made their opposition. And maybe there was some kind of peak in intensity around the 19th when they had their second opposition and Mercury was retrograde. And now Mercury is direct, moving forward with more clarity. Certainly, I don't think it will be a calm energy. Again, Mercury and Uranus are both kind of the nervous planets, so there may be a lot of nervous energy around information that feels destabilizing or unsettling for people. Personal or, newspapers, whatever, the news cycle, that's what they call it. And then on Wednesday, the 18th, we have the Sun making a sextile to Saturn. So it's a subtle aspect, but whenever there's a sextile, it's always an invitation to no matter what's happening, which things may be very challenging, it's well, what's working? What's the maybe long-term benefit of this, even though it's really uncomfortable in the moment? Or there's just an opportunity to look for something that's not quite so obvious, but where there is a connection and a little bit of a flow, or even if it's a trickle, rather than just, it's heavy, it's hard, it's crazy, right? And then staying centered and grounded. Again, we have fixed Sun in Scorpio, very fixed energy, can be very stable. And then Saturn in Capricorn is super grounded and foundation building and things like that. So anchor in to that tree and let the orchid move up your body. No, I don't know. But it's all a matter of perspective. All right. So often the subtlest little shift in your perspective can bring you such freedom and ease. And that we can find that with this. It's not necessarily it's not necessarily joyful expansion, but it's kind of like these aspects. It's very sobering. It's very just kind of, okay, this is what's happening. How are we gonna move it forward, right? What's good about this? Is there one thing? Really depends on your situation, of course. And then the 19th, which is the next day, Venus makes a square to Saturn. So, this is a very tense aspect and it's been building all week. And there is just this kind of feeling of dread, I feel kind of something's coming. It just feels heavy, right? Saturn always asks for a reality check, right? Of what's the foundation or the container of what are you trying to achieve, right? In the Venus matters, Venus being love, money, relationships, pleasure, good conversation, art, whatever, right? And this is a very important connection because it's kind of one of the last major aspect, classical aspect between these visible traditional planets in this cardinal thing, right? In this cardinal drama that's been playing out all year. So it's visible and it's important, okay? And then there's a waxing moon in Capricorn with Saturn at the same time. So there may be a lot of feelings with the moon in Capricorn or restricted feelings. You may not feel like you're able to have your feelings because it's just you have to just deal with what's at hand. But there may be a sense of loss, right? And longing. And so still the moon is in a waxing cycle. So from this place of reality check, new responses and responsibilities, what are you going to grow? What are you going to amplify? What are you going to magnify from this place of reality and truth rather than, pie in the sky or some kind of crazy projection? Try to be with what is, not what might be. And that could be really useful for that. Because on the 21st, which is Saturday, Venus just scoots on into Scorpio. So Venus moves from being in, serious upper hand to being in a very intense emotional sign that's not necessarily her favorite place to be. And so with Scorpio, things that you might have swept under the rug, especially with Venus in Libra, like, oh, I don't want to cause a conflict, I don't want to upset anybody, so I'll just hide that, or I'll just pretend it's not here. I'll just put all the dust under the rug, right? That stuff might come out, right, during the Venus in Scorpio time. Some encounters with the shadow side of love and relationships and even finances, right? So think about your investments and be prudent and be cautious. If it's too good to be true, it might be too good to be true. Because the same day, the Saturday the 21st, the sun enters Sagittarius. So the sun leaves Scorpio, but Venus goes into Scorpio, Mercury is in Scorpio, we've still got a strong Scorpio energy, but the sun is moving into Sagittarius season and it's definitely more hopeful and cheerful and optimistic. However, Sagittarius can just keep moving and visioning all the time, and it's like you got to ground it in reality and practicality too. So I do think that when we shift from Scorpio to Sagittarius season, there's often just some uplifting energy from just the intensity of Scorpio season. So that's week 3. Anything that I'm saying making you be like, now I know why Radiance Orchid's the orchid?
Yeah, you totally nailed it with on October 19th, this feeling of, loss and longing, and how can we be with what is, and how can we accept what is? That's totally it.
Okay. Yeah. And that's going to be building all month. You know what I mean? As Venus is in Libra, because when she's in Libra, even though she's not exactly squaring this Saturn, she's moving towards that. So she can see it's on the horizon. You know how you have to have like an encounter that you're kind of dreading, but it's coming. So you have to prepare for it. So that's that feeling of kind of like, oh, got to have this conversation, or I really got to look at this thing and I don't want to. So yeah, for sure. All right. I'm glad it's making sense. It always kind of comes together for us in the end, doesn't it? Yeah. 4th week of the month, as we close down the month, we enter eclipse season. This is the beginning of the week. It's sun gets close enough to the node, that the south node, that we're in eclipse season. But first, Monday, Mercury in Scorpio is making a trine to Neptune in Pisces, and the moon is in Pisces. There's a lot of water, but this can be some very intense emotionality. It's a moon day, so the moon has already got a very strong influence on Monday. But I really do feel like with the softening that can come from Neptune and all that Mercury has been through during the retrograde, and what is obvious now at this point in the month, that their potentiality is a very open-hearted conversation, right? Of something that's really important, of emotional importance to you. So that is the way the week begins. And so we're under the influence of that for a little bit. And then on Thursday, the sun is trining Chiron, sun in Sag, trining Chiron in Aries. I think that's Thanksgiving. Thursday, the 26th.
Oh boy.
But I think, listen, it's definitely could be some very fiery Thanksgiving conversations for sure, but I don't even know what people are doing this year for Thanksgiving. But in any event, I'm looking at the trine as a healing opportunity and a boost of energy and confidence for, sad Chiron and Aries retrograde. But I think you might want to sit at the kids' table. Just go have fun. Maybe you need to get your straw and get the peas. And
That sounds great.
Yeah. Well, tell me how the 8-year-old handles Thanksgiving. If it goes to the peas and the straw, you'll know. And then Friday, Mercury in Scorpio makes a sextile to Pluto. So I'd say, I wrote here, a hidden resource emerges. So, just be open to something hidden coming to light, perhaps, even if it's just in your own mind. And then the same day, Venus in Scorpio is making an opposition to Uranus in Taurus, and something wants to get free. I wrote sexy, shocking, and seductive. Just because Venus-Uranus oppositions have a lot of spice in them, Uranus is in Venus's sign in Taurus, but Uranus is ultimately a lot about freedom, and Scorpio is can get pretty enmeshed in control. So there may be a little bit of tension on, I guess that's Black Friday. We'll see what happens with the shopping and the numbers. And then Saturday, the 28th, Neptune stations direct. So Neptune's been retrograde for the last 5 months. Neptune is an outer planet, so it's really slow moving, like literally like maybe moves like 2 degrees a year or something crazy like that. Like it barely moves. But the direct station maybe will bring some creative and mystical kind of flow states. However, Neptune, again, confusing. What's real? What's fake? And are you moving forward from a place of truth, right? This year has offered you the opportunity to get really real and really true. Or are you going to stay wrapped up in your own illusions and delusions and lies, right? Because that's definitely a possibility here as well. So it's going to be interesting. I do think, though, they're ultimately, planets moving direct are more clear and forward moving, than when they're retrograde. But still, very slow Neptune, very dreamy energy. And then, of course, on Monday, there's the full moon eclipse. So we're also under the influence of eclipse season as well this week with all the aspects we've been talking about. And so this is a full moon eclipse in Gemini. It is a penumbral lunar eclipse. So this is what's really interesting about eclipses this year. All of the lunar eclipses have been penumbral eclipses. They're very mild as far as lunar eclipses go, because all that the moon is traveling through is like the outer shadow of the earth. So it's not those lunar eclipses that you look and see this blood red moon and it's very, very subtle, okay? However, it's still an eclipse. It's in Gemini, mutable air. So it's definitely pretty tricky. There could be a lot of drama, dramatic communications and ideas. And, the sun is in Sagittarius. The moon is in Gemini, which is being ruled by Mercury in Scorpio. So it's not like Mercury is super playful. Mercury is kind of intense, right? So the sun in Sag is kind of like bold and braggy and maybe loudmouthed, and the moon is like, I have a lot of ideas, and maybe, I'm just going to be contrary just because, I feel like it. I'm going to just be really, really stubborn and weird. But honestly, eclipses, they're a rebooting, all right? They're a lights out, or the light is different, and it kind of reboots something. So I feel like with Gemini, we have that polarity, and it's like the opportunity to kind of bring the two sides together. There's that both and rather than either or. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking about for this.
Hallelujah.
We'll see. At least within you and me, like each of us can take responsibility for that, right? And again, these penumbral eclipses, all the lunar eclipses have been really subtle this year, and the solar eclipses have been the big whammies this year. And that will continue for I believe it's a total solar eclipse of the sun in December. So we end the month in process of something, which is eclipse season. So we're in between. We start with a south node eclipse. So we're clearing away stuff from the past, maybe lower energy. Full moons can be really intense and maybe mental. There might be some mental fatigue, and maybe people are like really tired of hearing the same old, for lack of a better word, bullshit. You know what I mean? South node and Sag has a tendency towards some of that sometimes. And the same day as this eclipse, like involved in this lunation, there's a Mercury-Saturn sextile. So again, things may be wildly unpredictable and unstable and strange, but like, where can you anchor into some kind of stability in your own mind as things might be swirling around quite a bit by the end of the month? So that's it. That's November in a nutshell.
Can I just ask you a real quick question before we wrap?
Mm-hmm.
That would be, what sort of theme would you give for this next series of eclipses that will take place November, December? Just like an overall theme?
Yeah, well, let's just think. We're working, all the eclipses are going to be in Sagittarius and Gemini, so there's a lot about information and ideology, truth big truths and little truths. The North Node in Gemini is inviting in new perspectives. The South, actually, this is a North Node eclipse. I lied. The first eclipse is a North Node eclipse because it's in Gemini. So it's actually inviting in new perspectives and new solutions. Apologies for that mistake. And there's a lot of change in the air because it's mutable signs. And so their mutable signs are they shift the most. So they want us to adapt. So there's a lot of adaptation that's needed and a lot of letting go of old ideas and ideals that just aren't really valid anymore and getting new perspectives around that. So a lot of shifts and changes with the eclipses just by mutability. Yeah, a lot around the news and information.
Would you say because it's Sagittarius and they tend to be sort of aware of everyone? Maybe I'm not quite interpreting that correctly, but like, would you feel like these eclipses could bring us into a new, fresh perspective around health and healing and kind of medicine?
Well,
I mean, I'm fingers crossed. I'm making up a story here.
This is what I think is interesting, is that the North Node is in Gemini, which is an air sign. So that's what we're trying to grow. We're trying to get new perspectives, but it's also, Gemini is a sign of the twin, so it's polarizing. So that can be amplified as well, right? But I will say that what's interesting is that, so next month we have that new moon total eclipse in Sagittarius, and then at the end of the week, Jupiter, or the beginning of the following week, a week later, Jupiter and Saturn, what day is it? I think it's on the 21st. I can't tell by this calendar, but I think it's on solstice. Jupiter and Saturn are conjunct in Aquarius at 0 degrees. So that energy between Gemini and Aquarius, it's all air. So that's where, and Aquarius can be like new innovations in technology and medicine. So maybe, but not right away, I wouldn't think, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yep. We're just kind of opening the door to new perspectives. Later on,
new perspectives, yeah. But we're also opening the door to a lot of confusion because a lot of stuff that's coming up out of the South Node is really just nonsense. It's really, people really hold very tightly to their ideals and ideas and that kind of overzealous kind of energy, and that's the pitfall, I think. But yeah, ultimately, mutable eclipses want change, like really big. And we have to adapt. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I hope so. Lately, I've just been feeling such a strong urge and desire personally to really connect and highlight different healers and practitioners and doctors around the world. And so that was my sort of secret wish, was that the astrology would also support, this new sort of resurgence. How do I heal my body? How do I trust my body? How do I trust my immune system? What things can I do to support myself that may not be necessarily what we have been doing all along?
Yeah, that's always my hope with health and wellness. And I do think next year is going to be different. I mean, with those two planets, those social planets in Aquarius, new ideas, new technologies, and also again, Saturn and Uranus being in Taurus, and the square that's going to be playing out. So this is like long-term restructuring of things that have been very fixed. I think Uranus and Taurus it's about the body, but it's a lot about food as well. So ways we nourish ourselves, because Taurus is very much about food and fertility, things like that.
Wow. I do hear a leaf blower in your background. And I just want to say, if anybody needs like a humor relief break, there's a really funny video about leaf blowers that JP Sears did.
Oh, good. Because I'm so sorry that
no,
the leaf
it's
blower,
totally fine.
I got to have some air when I'm talking.
No, it's totally fine. It makes me actually chuckle every time I hear it now. Like, thank goodness people like that make videos, because now when I hear the leaf blower, I just think hilarious, funny versus irritation.
I'm going to Google it. Leaf blowers are so strange to me anyway. What do you do? I mean, I guess you're blowing it in a pile, but sometimes I just see them just like blowing it. I'm like, you're just blowing in your neighbor's yard. That's not cool. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's your assignment for November, is to watch the video, take your boundless wisdom, and be like a tree with orchids dancing up your trunk.
I love that. Hey, love that so much.
Yeah.
And if people want to find more about you, or they want to find out what's this next eclipse season, how is it going to affect their personal chart, what's the best way to reach out to you?
My website's KristinaWingeier.com. I think you guys usually put a link to it in the show notes. But yeah, everything's over there. And so let's have some space for some sessions through the end of the year. And definitely I'll be picking up the torch somehow with the astro forecasting, since we're stopping here. It's not going to be a podcast like this, but there'll be emails, there'll be maybe a blog, I don't know what, but come over to my mailing list, get on there, and you won't miss anything if you're going to miss my perspective on the astrology. It won't be me and Katie having a conversation, and there won't be necessarily any orchids dancing up trees, but there might be.
Yeah, a lot of people said they would miss the astrology. So go on over to KristinaWingeier.com, sign up for her newsletter, and stay in touch with all the planetary influences starting in 2021. But for now, we'll close November and we'll do one more podcast in December to finish up the 2020 year.
Close out 2020, close out it with an eclipse season. I think we began with eclipse season, so it's kind of cool that we're closing out with eclipses. I think we started with the eclipses that were in Cancer and Capricorn. I think that's when this all... Wow. That's really when the cardinal crunch began, but it's been pretty active this year for sure. It says a cardinal rising. You're a cardinal rising too, so I'm sure that you've been experiencing it as well in your own life. Just meaning that if you're a cardinal rising sign, there's probably been really big changes in your identity, in your relationships, in your home life potentially, and even in your work. Those areas probably went under some big changes and challenges.
Check.
Right? I'm telling you, cardinal risings, now mutable risings, it's all on you. No, I'm kidding.
So for folks who aren't familiar, cardinal, for the rising sign, it would be Aries,
Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. Those are the cardinal. So those are the cardinal signs. The fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And then the mutable signs are Gemini, Virgo, and
Pisces?
Sagittarius, and Pisces.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so if you're in the first four, you had a major restructuring, right?
Yes, most definitely. Goodness. Whew. It's just shocking to me that we're actually recording for November. This year has just been the fastest and slowest year ever. It's just the biggest, weirdest paradox. It's been so odd.
I know. It's just thinking about December of 2019 seems like 4 years ago.
I know, right? We've lived so many lifetimes this year. So true. Yeah. Wow. All right, everyone. Well, take good care of yourselves this month, and thank goodness Mars is stationing direct. That's very good. It's gonna feel really good. It may not feel really amazing right away, but I think now, this is me, and now Mars retrogrades are the hardest. Mm-hmm. They're the longest, because of personal planets are the longest, and you just can lose steam, and lose motivation and be very tired and kind of bored and have this ennui and malaise, and that's now fun, that's really hard. It's a long retrograde, so I am so ready for.
Ooh, one more quick question for you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, from your perspective in terms of planetary aspects, would you be able to say that there may be some openings for travel coming up anytime November, December-ish? Maybe some borders might lift or some...
I honestly think, if anything, the opposite, but I'm sorry to say that. I'm sorry. I know we're itching for it. I don't know that that's going to be the effect. I don't know.
Right.
You can drive around the United States. All those borders are open.
It's big.
Go on a road trip. I know. I don't know. I think there's nothing jumping out at me that says that that's a big shift that's happening anytime soon.
Okay.
Sadly.
All righty.
Yes.
Well, we'll wait and see.
But you never know. You never know what's going to happen. You never know. So.
You never know. Limitless possibilities in every moment. All right. Thank you so much, Kristina, for being with us.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you so much for listening to The Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.